Ole Miss is going to beat Furman on Saturday, but that isn't the goal. It should be a given.
You are Locked On Ole Miss, your daily podcast on the Ole Miss Rebels. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome, Rebel Nation. I'm your host, Steven Willis, a 10-year veteran member of the national media with Yahoo Sports and a former Ole Miss staff member. Today, we're gearing up for what could be the most anticipated football season in Ole Miss history as Ole Miss takes on the Furman Paladins tomorrow. While the Rebels should come out on top because they have superior talent, the real focus is going to be on them getting playoff ready. Jaxson Dart is now entering a third year with Lane Kiffin. That has been pivotal to shaping this team in the transfer portal and in the offensive efficiency as well. We'll dive into what we can expect from him tomorrow with insights from Pro Football Focus. Thanks for joining us on the Locked On Ole Miss podcast. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share. This is the Locked On Ole Miss podcast, your daily podcast on the Ole Miss Rebels, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. We're free and available on all the podcast apps and on YouTube. Thanks for making Locked On your first listen every day, and a special hello to the insiders and everydayers who make the show what it is. Don't forget to find a second listen on the network. Chris Gordy, Locked On SEC, or even Corey Burton at Vandy. They provide other perspectives on college football, the SEC, and even Ole Miss. So check it out. You know how I feel about perspectives. 5 Hour Energy fixes tired fast with zero sugar and convenient portable sizes. It is the perfect pick-me-up for getting stuff done. Go to 5hourenergy.com and use the promo code LOCKEDONCFB to receive a 20% off discount on your order. This is only available until September 30th, and it cannot be used with other promotions. Go to 5hourenergy.com today. All right, so this is our first Why Ole Miss Wins episode of the season for new people to the channel. We do this on Friday before every football game. It doesn't matter if Ole Miss is playing Furman or if they're playing Georgia. We're going to do this episode. And we're going to tell you why that Ole Miss should win the game, why if Ole Miss wins the game, why that happened, and we'll give you our predictions and everything going into the game. And the reason that Ole Miss is going to win this game is because they have better football players than the Furman Paladins. It's an FCS school. Ole Miss is a 42.5-point favorite and an over-under of 60.5 points. Ole Miss is the overwhelming favorite to win this game. There's no use even pretending otherwise. But winning against the Furman Paladins is not the goal. The goal for Ole Miss is to win the national title, to make it to the playoffs. To do that, you obviously have to be good enough to beat the Furman Paladins. So if you're as good as you're trying to be and you're very process-oriented, and right now Lane Kiffin is leaning heavily on what Nick Saban has done at Alabama in the past. You can see it just oozing through his veins at the moment. They're very process-oriented. They're going to be process-oriented all the way through. They're not going to do the ups and downs and roller coasters of a team. They're going to try and make this as even-keeled as humanly possible. And the reason you can do that is because these three things. This is the reason Ole Miss is going to beat Furman. And honestly, their talent, they'll play clean and their talent's going to overwhelm. Ole Miss has a year 3 Jaxson Dart and Lane Kiffin combination. That's a pretty big deal. And the way you always upset at Ole Miss in years past was through the Ole Miss defense. That defensive deficiency has been fixed. And because of that, it's going to be very difficult for Furman to win a 17-13 game, judging by what this offense could be as well. Should be interesting. So we're going to start off talking about the year 3 Lane Kiffin and Jaxson Dart combination and why that's important. When you look at Jaxson Dart a year ago, he threw for 3,364 yards on 233 completions, 358 attempts, 23 touchdowns, 5 interceptions. He had a whole lot more if they weren't relying on Quinshawn in the tight red zone area, and they allowed him to throw the ball because they had more decent-sized targets in the end zone. Dayton Wade, loved Dayton Wade. Jordan Watkins, loved Jordan Watkins. Neither one of them did a whole lot to take a lot of the attention off of Trey Harris that allowed defenses to double him. That's the reason I talk about all this season, Lane Kiffin's goal in the transfer portal was to recruit players to make it more difficult to double team Trey Harris. And even, I'll go ahead and say this, I'm not going to be somebody that goes after doom clicks or anything like that, but with Deion Smith not being named eligible, that doesn't necessarily affect what's going on. Now, there are more people to take double teams off of Trey Harris. Yes, that would be a really big deal. But Juice Wells, Aiden Williams, those guys, they should be good enough to take those double teams off as well. So don't expect the offense, their outlook to change too much, even without Deion Smith, who is an unbelievably talented player. And if I was him, I would be on the phone to the UFL right now. So let's look at Jaxson Dart's numbers in the first couple of years. Let's start off with 2022 and see what he did. These are his quadrants. These are his quadrants on the field, and he struggled throwing the ball down the field, nearly 30% outside and left. He was about a little bit like 45% outside right. He was about 30% in the deep center. That was not a good area of the field. He threw picks in the center of the field 8 times, to the point where we had Jake Crane on my show, and he talked about the blind spot that Jaxson Dart has for linebackers. But there was one drive in 2022 that stands out to me. And the reason that I knew that Jaxson Dart had it was the drive that he did at the end of the game against Mississippi State, 99 yards. Now, we tried to get a little bit cute on the 2-point conversion, and State made a really great play. But Jaxson Dart, in a rainstorm, in a windstorm, was able to drive that football team down the field and get it to the point where Ole Miss had a chance to win that game. So that's how I knew that Jaxson Dart had it. And we were worried about the middle quadrant. That's the 37 for 54 for 844 yards, or 804 yards, 8 touchdowns, and 2 interceptions. His NFL passer ratings like 137. That quadrant was the question quadrant for Jaxson Dart. That was the quadrant that everybody worried about. He raised up his passer rating outside right, outside and left. The only thing that he needed to really work on going into his third year is to improve the outside, the center deep quadrant. But he's up over 125 NFL passer rating in all of the 10 to 20 yard quadrants, both left, middle, and right. Every question that you've had for Jaxson Dart and over his career, he's answered. He's gotten better and better. But we do not know what a year 3 Jaxson Dart looks like. We all assume that the numbers should jump, and the number jump should be large if you go off of other year 3 starting quarterbacks. If you count Eli Manning, if you count even Matt Corral before he got injured. Year 3 starting quarterbacks in the Ole Miss system, they usually have a significant jump. I'm expecting the same thing to happen with Jaxson Dart this year. He could throw for somewhere in the neighborhood of 3,800 yards. He could throw for 40 touchdowns. It should be interesting, especially with the weapons that he has at his disposal that honestly Eli Manning didn't have, that honestly Matt Corral didn't have as well. His competitive nature will continue to affect other players. Listen, Jaxson Dart has done a job this year to make this team his team. This isn't Lane Kiffin's team in 2024. This is Jaxson Dart's team. Jaxson Dart recruited players like Walter Nolan and Princely Emmanuel and Juice Wells. And if you watch the season on Wednesday, they talked about him being at a dinner with every single visitor they brought in. Not offensive visitor, not quarterback visitor, every single visit. And he took recruiting very seriously for Ole Miss this year. This is his team, and that competitive nature will continue to affect others. He has a magnetic personality, and that is going to be cool. One thing that I want to see, Jaxson Dart have more games like LSU, Texas A&M, and Penn State. Those 3 games were fantastic, but there can't be eggs laid, especially in the bigger games against the Georgia Bulldogs, against the Alabama Crimson Tides in 2023. He struggled a little bit. He needs to have those good games against the Oklahoma Sooners, who's going to have a really good defense this year. The Georgia Bulldogs, who is going to have an even better defense this year. That's going to be imperative. And that is another area that I think he could make a jump in year 3. Listen, a year 3 Jaxson Dart has a chance to be the most special quarterback that we have seen at Ole Miss. Honestly, that's not even me being hyperbolic. That is just the truth. If Jaxson Dart just has a chalk year of what the expectations are, just normal, just the expectations, nothing special, he's going to walk out of here with 90 to 95% of all quarterbacking records, rushing and passing. And he's going to walk out of here the winningest quarterback in Ole Miss history. We're talking statue land. That's what we're talking about is on the table for him. Now, the one thing that everybody's going to ask is like, do you leave Jaxson Dart in the game against Furman to pad stats? Because everybody talks Jaxson Dart's, according to FanDuel, is a plus 1,500 to win the Heisman Trophy. Do you leave him in to pad stats to get ready to go? And the answer to that is unequivocally no. You do not do that. The goal for this team, and they have the single-minded focus. If you watch the season, you can see that. The goal is to win the national title. The goal is not anything individual award related. So I think that you're going to see backup quarterbacks probably earlier than you even expect to see backup quarterbacks. Coming up next, in years past, teams found a path to upset the Ole Miss Rebels through their defense. But this season, that is all changed. We break down this new look that's got Lane Kiffin excited. Hey, Rebel fans, if you're like me, you're balancing a busy schedule while trying to stay healthy, and that can be a challenge. That is why I'm excited to tell you about Factor Meals, your go-to for quick, nutritious, and delicious meals that fit perfectly in your day. Factor Meals are chef-crafted and dietitian approved with options like Calorie Smart, Protein Plus, and Keto. They're fresh, never frozen, and they're ready to eat in just 2 minutes. Whether you're in between work or the gym or catching a Rebels game, Factor makes it easy to stay on top of your wellness goals. And with over 35 meals and over 60 add-ons to choose from each week, you'll never get bored with it as well. From breakfast to dessert, Factor's got you covered with premium ingredients like filet mignon, shrimp, blackened salmon, plus no more time wasted shopping, prepping, or cleaning up. So what are you waiting for? Head to factormeals.com/LockedOnCollege50, all one word, and use code LockedOnCollege50, all one word, to get 50% off your first box and 20% off your next month. That's LockedOn50 at factormeals.com/LockedOn50. Fuel your bodies, crush your goals, and enjoy every single bite. Passion, drive, and patience, the formula for winning championships, is also what keeps your ride or die alive. eBay Motors has everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance. Superchargers, roof racks, exhaust kits, LED headlights, and more. Whether you're into speed, power, or style, eBay Motors has got you covered. And with over 122 million parts for your number one ride or die, you'll always find exactly what you're looking for. And with eBay's Guaranteed Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every single time or your money back. Because with eBay Motors, you're burning rubber, not cash. With all the parts you need and the prices you want, it's easy to make your car the MVP and bring home huge wins. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply. eBay's Guaranteed Fit is only available to U.S. customers. College football is back, and it's not too late to catch up before the season kicks off. SEC and ACC, Big Ten, and Big 12 previews, they're available now. You can get all that from Locked On stable of college experts by subscribing to the Locked On College Football Podcast. Who has a chance to make it to the playoff? Which teams will cause the most chaos in their new conference? Everything you need to know all in one place. Be sure to follow and subscribe the Locked On College Football Podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every single day. You know, it's really interesting to me, and I'm about to say an ugly word that's probably going to freak out a lot of Ole Miss fans, but the 2010 Jacksonville State game. Everybody remembers the 2010 Jacksonville State game, and I guarantee you between now and the time it kicks off, somebody is going to mention that game to Ole Miss fans. That's fine. Other schools, we do it to them as well. We do remember the Maine when talking to a State fan. That's just the way that works. But The reason that Jacksonville State was able to get in that game was Ole Miss's defense was putrid. It was awful. That was back when Tyrone Nix couldn't stop a nosebleed. So you had a situation to where Jacksonville State could score with Ole Miss. Ole Miss ended up putting up 45 points in the game or something like that. It was the defense that was the problem. And every time that Ole Miss has been in a game to where they have been on the verge of getting upset, the defense has been the problem. It's always the defense. It just seems that's almost like a scheduled post. Whenever Ole Miss has a trouble, with an inferior opponent, quote, it's going to be on the defense. Well, that's not the case anymore. This defense, Lane Kiffin said, was the best, most talented defense that he has ever been associated with as a head coach. Now, I'm sure he's had some stuff at Alabama to where those guys were different breeds. But at Ole Miss, at USC, at FAU, at Tennessee, this is the best defense he's ever had as a head coach. And Pete Golding is the best defensive coordinator that Ole Miss maybe has had ever, probably since Joe Lee Dunn, if we're going to be honest. And so Ole Miss seemingly has corrected the slim, narrow path for an FCS team to defeat Ole Miss. Now, this all goes out the window if Ole Miss turns the ball over and plays really sloppy. If the kinder, gentler fall camp comes back and just backfires spectacularly, this is all null and void. But if Ole Miss comes into this football game competent, if there's not mental errors, if they're not turning the ball over, if they're not making special teams blunders, if there's 11 players on the field, if all of that happens, Ole Miss should win the game fairly comfortably. And that also means the offense is going to perform at such a level that the defense is not going to even have a chance to give up enough points to get themselves in trouble. This is honestly a game that I think Furman is probably 10 points. That's probably a very good game for Furman if they score 10 points in the game. And the question you have to ask yourself, can Ole Miss score 53.5 to cover? Because the question is definitely not, can Ole Miss score 11? Because, Ole Miss might score 11 by midway through the first quarter. It's just the way it is. It's not an insult at the Furman Paladins. They getting their money. They're funding their athletic department. This is called a rent-a-win for a reason. So if Ole Miss comes out and plays clean, they should be able to handle business. And these new transfer players that Ole Miss has brought in, like Walter Nolan from Texas A&M, or Princely Amon-Mielen from the University of Florida, or even Chris Hardy from Jacksonville State. This will be their debut where you get to see those players on the field. And I'm curious to see what they will look like. It's not even a situation of can Furman score enough to be in the game with Ole Miss. I want to see this Ole Miss defense. Is it like the Mercer game? If everybody remembers the Mercer game a year ago where the first play from scrimmage, they busted an 80-yard touchdown on the Ole Miss defense and did nothing else the remainder of the day. And Pete Golding traditionally is just destroyed bad to mid defenses. So we'll see, or bad to mid offenses, I should say. We'll see exactly what this looks like. But Pete Golding has this team in a position to where if you're worried about the traditional path to an upset in a football game, it's usually through the Ole Miss defense. And that doesn't seem to be a viable thing for Furman. Coming up next, we will wrap up our thoughts on Furman and break down what this preseason means for the Rebels. So don't go anywhere. Locked On Ole Miss continues. Grab a 5-hour energy shot to stay alert to watch all of your favorite games on Saturday. Or if it's Sunday morning and you've stayed up all night to watch those intense overtime games, maybe catching Hawaii, you can take a 5-hour energy shot in the morning so you can start your day. 5-Hour Energy is the brand hardworking people like you have trusted for over 20 years to give them an alert, energized feeling they need to get through a busy, hectic day. All you need to know is where to find 5-Hour Energy shots, right? Well, it's at the cash register at nearly every convenience, drug, or grocery store in the nation. stock up on money-saving multi-packs to make sure you never run out of delicious 5-hour energy shots. And if you go to 5hourenergy.com, that is the number 5, hourenergy.com, and get some 5-hour energy product today, you can use my promo code LOCKEDONCFB to receive $20 off your first purchase. Now, that's only valid until September 30th on only one order, and it can't be used with other promotions. It's not good with other subscription orders as well. But go to 5hourenergy.com today. Really interesting. You know, when you start off with an FCS opponent, it's really difficult whenever you do stuff. You know, you want to have standard plans on day by day. And the Why Ole Miss Wins episode, when you play an FCS opponent, everybody's like, well, yes, of course, Ole Miss should win the game. Ole Miss has a better team than that. But, you know, as a segment, as a show, we want to do this because once you're playing Oklahoma, once you're playing Georgia, once you're playing LSU, this is a really, really big show. And you need to kind of set the hook in the first month of the season. Listen, Ole Miss has a better football team than Furman. Just divisionally, SEC to FCS. It has a situation to where if Ole Miss should be able to run the ball at will in the game. It's a situation where you want to look at players and you're like, hey, this player had 5 rushes for 55 yards. This player had a really good game. That might not be the case. So when you watch these games, these FCS games, it's got to be about the eyeball test. And you have to know how that running back got the 55 yards on 5 carries. Because if he has 1 run for 54 yards and 4 runs for 1 yard, he did not have a good day because you had an FCS bust for the reason that he did it. And of the other carries, he was not able to do it. But if he had 5 carries and averaged about 10 yards per pop, you know that he had a really good day. With Jaxson Dart, if he throws multiple interceptions, 1 is forgivable. You can do the gunslinger thing. I never blame somebody for 1 pick, but if it goes over and over again and turnovers start to mount up, that's a problem. For this game to be a success for Ole Miss, obviously a win. I'm not worried necessarily about covering. Because in an over-under line and all the point spreads that they have right now, that's based off of the old points per possession that they were doing a year ago. And the Florida State-Georgia Tech game, there were 7 offensive possessions per team. Now, there were some really long drives in that game. Georgia Tech ran the football. But I think the under bet is probably the early bet as this season heads on. I would probably stay away from the 42.5 point line, even though that is Furman. Ole Miss is going to be good, is going to be fine. I just don't know if that many points is going to be there for the taking. For example, if Furman scores a touchdown in that game, all of a sudden you need 53 points. And how does that look? You might need special teams touchdowns or defensive touchdowns to get the number up to a high point to where you can actually cover. Now, doesn't say anything negative about Ole Miss as a football team. I think Ole Miss is going to be all right. My final prediction for this game, I think Ole Miss is going to win 45-10. I think Furman is going to score a garbage time touchdown that is going to take this game from being on the verge of an Ole Miss cover to the Furman lock as a cover in their way. Ole Miss is going to win the game fairly easy, 45-10, because I think once Ole Miss gets up to 28-0, 31-0, you're going to see backups go into the football game. And those backups are going to be responsible for determining whether or not Ole Miss covers or not. I think 45-10 is the play in this game. It's an FCS game. Ole Miss is trying to make the playoffs. They need to do things in this game that wins, but also do things in this game that helps them to make the playoffs. When you play a mock game and then you go into an FCS game, let's just be honest about this. The mock game service team is about the same level of what the opponent is going to be on Saturday. So you do need to bully them just a little bit, but it's going to step up next week with Middle Tennessee. It is going to step up the week after that at Wake Forest. And then potentially, depending on who you ask, It might step up with Georgia Southern coming into the town. The boys from Statesboro, they are no joke. And Clay Helton, everybody thinks of the option stuff, that old Navy offense. Clay Helton, they have them running kind of a true spread down in Statesboro right now. But those are the 4 non-conference games leading up to Kentucky on the last day of September. Going to be a big deal. It's going to be a big deal. As Ole Miss trying to make the playoffs, there's certain things that need to be accomplished in each one of these games. Not the least is winning the game. Ole Miss is going to be a 2 to 3 touchdown favorite at a minimum over all 4 of them. But there's things that need to happen in those games for Ole Miss to be playoff ready and to go down the road to where they're at their best possible self when the Georgia Bulldogs run on the field in Vaught-Hemingway Stadium on November 9th. That is why this game matters. There's stuff that happens. Ole Miss had a kinder, gentler fall camp. They had a kinder, gentler spring practice, which means how is the team going to look over the first month of the season? And because of that kinder, gentler fall camp, I do think the underplay is going to be the play for the next 4 weeks. Now, theoretically, everything should be ramped up by the time Kentucky comes into Vaught-Hemingway Stadium. Theoretically, that's the way that should look. But I do not have high hopes for any sort of a machine hopping out. Now, Ole Miss could come out guns a-blazing against Furman and be good straight from the jump, and that could happen. Hey, I'm all for it. But whenever football coaches, and this is over the course of the last 120 years, whenever football coaches see things that are a little bit sloppy, what's their instinct? Their instinct is to get physical, to get harder in practice and things like that, to make practice simulate a game as much as possible. We'll see how it looks. Hopefully, Ole Miss operationally is sound. They do not turn the football over, and the defense just can go out and win the game, because we will talk about this as the season goes on. But how much does Lane Kiffin's offense change with this defense? Does everybody remember in 2014 how the offense changed to where Hugh Freeze realized that, hey, we have the number 1 scoring defense in all of college football. Offensively, we need to play to them. They need to be the number 1. Injuries and all this other stuff happened, but that was something interesting that I saw Hugh Freeze do. Will Lane Kiffin do something similar to that as well? So thank you again for making the Locked On Ole Miss podcast your go-to source for Ole Miss sports. We pride ourselves on offering the most comprehensive perspectives, which is why we're the number 1 Ole Miss podcast out there. And thank you for that. Your support means the world to us. Thank you for making Locked On Ole Miss your first listen every day. Now go check out the Locked On College Football podcast. From NIL deals to the never-ending conference realignment rumors, Spencer McLaughlin gets you ready for an exciting season on the gridiron. You can find the link down below for Locked On College Football in the description, so you don't even need to search. They're part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Also, exciting news. You can now become a member of the Locked On Ole Miss Insiders. It's the best and easiest way to stay updated on all things Ole Miss sports. It's a texting program that sends you notifications on everything relevant without the hassles of message boards filled with trolls. And also, you have a one-on-one impact and way to contact me. Enjoy a 14-day free trial and experience the future of college sports coverage. We're adding new perks every day as we grow, so don't miss out. The link is down in the description. And for those watching on YouTube, we will send you to Locked On College Sports right now. Howdy toddy, everyone.